Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. This time, we're taking a look at the wild world of evolutionary theories. We've got a whole stack of sources here, exploring all kinds of different perspectives on how life on Earth has changed over time. And let's face it, some of these theories are so out there, they're practically begging for a little humor.
Oh, absolutely. Evolution is a vast and complex topic. There have been a lot of different attempts to explain its mechanisms.
Right. Like, everybody's heard of Darwin, right?
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, natural selection, all that. But, when you really start digging into it, it's not quite as straightforward as it seems at first glance.
Yeah, Darwin's ideas were groundbreaking for sure. But like any scientific theory, they've been refined and expanded upon over time.
For example, take the whole idea of humans evolving from apes. That one's always good for a heated debate.
Oh, absolutely. And it often comes down to a misunderstanding of what evolution actually means. It's not about individuals getting stronger or smarter within their lifetime.
Right, it's about entire species transforming over generations.
Exactly. It's about populations accumulating small changes over thousands or even millions of years.
Okay, so picture this. If all species evolve, shouldn't we be seeing a bunch of in-between species roaming around? Where are all the missing links?
Ah, the classic missing link conundrum. Well, for one thing, fossilization is a pretty rare event.
Oh, right. It takes very specific conditions for an organism's remains to be preserved.
Exactly. So the fossil record is bound to be incomplete. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with only a handful of pieces.
And to make things even more complicated, then we have the discovery of DNA. Suddenly we have this whole new level of understanding about how evolution might actually work, like at the molecular level.
Absolutely. The discovery of DNA was a total game changer. It provided a mechanism for how those small changes, those variations within a species, actually occur.
Mutations, typos in the instruction manual for life.
Exactly. And most of those typos are either harmless or harmful.
But every now and then you get a typo that's actually beneficial.
Right. Maybe it helps an organism survive better in its environment.
Find food more easily, attract mates, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And those are the organisms that are more likely to reproduce and pass on their genes. So those beneficial mutations become more common in the population over time.
Okay, so we've got random mutations creating variation, and then natural selection acting as a filter, choosing which variations get to stick around. It's starting to make sense. But you know what? Things take an interesting turn when we start looking at the work of some Japanese scientists.
Oh, yes. Japanese scientists, particularly those in the field of ecology, have made some really important contributions to our understanding of evolution.
They've challenged some of those traditional Western views.
And they've offered some fascinating alternative perspectives.
Like take Kinji Imanishi, for example. He was all about observing how organisms actually interact in their natural habitats.
And what he found wasn't always this, cutthroat competition that Darwin emphasized.
Right, he saw a lot of cooperation and coexistence.
Imanishi's habitat segregation theory is a great example of this. He noticed that different species often occupy distinct ecological niches, even when they share similar resources. It's like they figured out a way to divide and conquer, rather than constantly fighting over the same scraps.
Like those warblers he studied, right?
Yeah.
Different species all living in the same tree.
Exactly.
But they each have their own little zone, like their own little apartment in the tree.
Exactly. It's a fantastic example of how cooperation can be a driving force in evolution. Instead of constantly competing, species can find ways to coexist. And they even benefit from each other's presence.
Okay, but then we have another Japanese scientist, Tetsuya Suda, who took things a step further. He actually challenged Darwin head-on with this bold experiment. He was working with E. coli bacteria.
Ah, yes, Suda's famous experiment. He essentially pitted highly reproductive E. coli against their, less prolific counterparts.
And according to Darwin, the superior strain should have completely dominated, right?
You would think so, yes. Outcompeted the weaker strain and taken over the entire population.
But that's not what happened.
No, the results were quite surprising.
What, did they stage a coup?
Not quite. The highly reproductive E. coli actually, they held back.
They held back. Seriously.
It seems they limited their own growth, almost as if to ensure the survival of the weaker strain.
Wow, talk about self-control. Like those bacteria were aware of the bigger picture or something.
It's certainly a mind-boggling finding. It directly contradicts the survival of the fittest principle. And it really suggests that there's more to evolution than just competition.
Right. Like maybe cooperation and balance are even more fundamental to how life evolves. Okay, so we've got Darwin, we've got the Japanese scientists with their unique perspectives. But then things get even more interesting when we bring in Lynn Margulis. She came in with this completely different view on evolution,
Ah, Lynn Margulis, a true pioneer.
the queen of microbiology. She basically said, if you want to understand how life works, you got to look at the little guys.
Her expertise with microorganisms gave her a unique vantage point, that's for sure.
And it led her to develop this theory called symbiogenesis.
The idea that evolution is driven not just by competition, but also by cooperation, by the merging of different organisms to create new life forms.
So we're not just talking about organisms competing for resources, we're talking about them, like, teaming up.
Merging, creating something entirely new.
Wow. Okay, so how does this explain the complexity of life?
Well, Margulis argued that many of the complex structures we see in cells today, things like mitochondria and chloroplasts, they were originally independent bacteria.
Well, hold on. So these things that are essential parts of our cells, they used to be separate organisms.
That's the idea. And over time, these once separate organisms became integrated, working together for the benefit of the whole.
So life is like a giant Lego set, where evolution is all about snapping those pieces together in new and creative ways.
That's a great analogy. And this theory actually helps to explain how even the simplest organisms can have such complex structures.
Like the flagellum of the E. coli bacteria.
Ex-
It's this tiny little whip-like tail that propels the bacteria forward. But it's incredibly efficient, like almost too sophisticated to have arisen by chance mutations alone.
Right, it's incredibly complex.
It's like finding a perfectly engineered Ferrari engine inside a tiny little bacteria. Something doesn't quite add up.
And that's where the concept of intelligent design enters the picture.
Okay, now we're getting into potentially controversial territory. But let's be clear here, we're not talking about religious beliefs.
No, not at all. Intelligent design is a scientific hypothesis that suggests that some aspects of life might be too complex to be explained by purely naturalistic processes.
So it's about acknowledging the possibility that there might be forces at work that we don't fully understand yet.
Exactly. Forces that could be responsible for the incredible complexity and diversity of life on Earth.
So are current methods even capable of fully explaining the origins of life?
It's a question worth pondering. And that actually leads us to an even more radical idea: the potential role of consciousness in evolution.
Okay, now we're really going down the rabbit hole here. You're talking about the idea that our thoughts, our minds, might actually have some influence on the evolutionary process.
It might sound far-fetched, but some scientists and philosophers are exploring this idea.
That consciousness might be more than just a passive observer of reality.
Exactly, that it might actually play an active role in shaping it.
Whoa. Okay, so we've gone from Darwin's survival of the fittest to Japanese scientists talking about cooperation to the possibility of intelligent design, and now we're questioning the very nature of reality and consciousness.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
This is wild.
And we're only just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive into evolutionary theories.
Picking up right where we left off, this idea that our own minds could be like intertwined with evolution, it's pretty trippy.
It is, isn't it? It's a real head-scratcher.
So is there any evidence to back this up? Like that our thoughts and beliefs could actually be impacting the world around us?
Well, it's definitely a frontier area of science. Lots of unknowns, you know. But there's some really interesting hints that suggest consciousness might be more than just passively watching reality unfold.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's look at quantum physics for a sec.
Quantum physics. All right, I'm listening.
It suggests that at the subatomic level, the world's a lot fuzzier than we thought.
Fuzzy. How so?
It's less deterministic. Like, particles can be in multiple states at once.
Whoa.
And get this, the act of observing them seems to actually influence how they behave.
So you're saying that by just looking at something, we might be changing it.
That's what quantum physics suggests, yeah.
That's pretty wild.
And some scientists are even proposing that consciousness might not just be collapsing these possibilities, but actually influencing them.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Back up a second.
Shaping the very fabric of reality, they say?
Hold on. You're saying my thoughts, like my beliefs, could be changing the physical world around me.
It's an idea.
Like, if I really believe I can fly, I might sprout wings.
Probably not wings, no.
Okay, good. Just checking.
But the idea is our minds could have this subtle but real influence on how matter behaves, even at the tiniest level, subatomic.
And if that's true, I guess it's not a huge leap to think consciousness could play a role in evolution too.
Exactly.
But how would that even work? Like, how could my thoughts affect something as, well, as seemingly objective as genetics and natural selection?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, for real.
But one possibility is that consciousness acts as this, like, guiding force.
Guiding force.
Yeah, kind of nudging evolution in certain directions.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So you've got a group of animals facing some new challenge in their environment.
Right?
What if, by focusing their attention on adapting, their collective consciousness could subtly influence their genetic mutations?
So it's like if enough giraffes really, really want to reach those high leaves, their combined willpower could lead to longer necks.
It's a fascinating hypothesis, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And while it's still just speculation, it makes us wonder, maybe evolution isn't entirely random, like Darwin thought.
Like, there's some bigger force at play.
A force of consciousness, maybe?
It's a lot to take in. I mean, we've got Darwin saying it's all about random mutations and survival of the fittest. Then we've got these Japanese scientists highlighting cooperation and coexistence, Margulis with her merging organisms, and now consciousness thrown into the mix.
My head's spinning a little, to be honest.
It's a lot, I know.
I mean, how do we even make sense of all this?
Well, that's the beauty of studying evolution, right?
Yeah.
It's like this giant puzzle, always finding new pieces and figuring out how they fit.
True, true. And maybe there isn't one right answer, Maybe evolution's a lot more complex than we ever imagined.
Like a tapestry woven from all these different threads. Competition, cooperation, random chance, intelligent design, even consciousness.
A tapestry, I like that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But let's go back to the missing links for a second. If evolution is this gradual process, shouldn't we be finding more fossils of those in-between stages? Yeah, that's a really common misunderstanding about evolution. People expect to see this perfectly smooth progression in the fossil record.
Right. Like from ape to human, with all the steps in between.
But remember, fossilization is incredibly rare. It's not like every creature that dies turns into a fossil.
True.
Most organisms decompose, leaving no trace.
So it's not that the missing links don't exist, it's just that we haven't found them all yet.
Exactly. It's totally possible there are tons of fossils out there, buried deep underground, waiting to be discovered.
And every new fossil find adds a new piece to the puzzle.
Exactly. It gives us a glimpse into a new chapter of the evolutionary story.
It's like we're piecing together a giant jigsaw puzzle with most of the pieces missing.
And the picture keeps getting more complex as we find more pieces.
So we got to be patient and keep digging, keep searching.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, we've got all these different theories trying to explain how evolution works.
It can be a little overwhelming, I know.
It's like trying to navigate a jungle of ideas.
True, but it's important to remember that these different theories aren't necessarily mutually exclusive,
Right.
They often overlap and complement each other.
It's not about picking one right theory and throwing out the rest.
It's about recognizing the value of different perspectives and trying to integrate them into a more complete picture.
Using different lenses to see the same tapestry, so to speak.
Exactly. It's about embracing the complexity and acknowledging that there's still so much we don't know.
Well said. So we've talked about Darwin, the Japanese scientists, Margulis, and this whole consciousness thing.
Quite the lineup.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about, and it might be the most controversial of all.
Oh. More controversial than consciousness influencing evolution. I'm intrigued. What is it?
What if I told you that some scientists believe evolution might actually have a direction, a purpose?
A purpose. You're talking about teleology, the idea that there's some ultimate goal that life is striving toward.
You got it. A grand plan, if you will. It's a concept that's been debated forever, and I have a feeling it's going to spark some lively discussion.
It certainly will. It's a complex topic and one that deserves a closer look. So let's dive into this fascinating and often misunderstood concept of teleology in evolution.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle this big idea, teleology in evolution. Basically, the idea that evolution might actually have a direction, a purpose, a grand plan even. Like life isn't just wandering around aimlessly, it's actually heading towards some specific destination.
It's a fascinating concept, that's for sure. And it's easy to see why people might think that way, right? When you look at the history of life, you see this progression from single-celled organisms to incredibly complex creatures like us.
Yeah, it seems like there's this upward trajectory over billions of years. But maybe that's just our human bias talking. We like to think we're the pinnacle of evolution, the ultimate goal.
It's certainly something to be aware of, that bias. We tend to view the world through a very human lens. And from our perspective, yeah, it's easy to see evolution as this ladder leading straight to us.
But what if that's just an illusion?
What if evolution doesn't actually have a predetermined direction?
Hmm. Okay, so let's play devil's advocate for a minute. What are some of the arguments in favor of this teleology thing, this idea of a direction in evolution?
Well, one argument comes from something called convergent evolution.
Convergent evolution.
Yeah, it's when totally unrelated species end up evolving similar traits because they're facing similar environmental pressures,
Okay.
like bats and birds, for example.
Right, both have wings.
Exactly. But they're not closely related at all. So the fact that they both evolved wings suggests that maybe there are only so many good solutions out there, certain optimal designs that natural selection tends to favor.
So it's like saying there are only so many ways to build a flying creature.
Kinda, yeah. And some people see this as evidence that evolution might be guided by some underlying principle, like some kind of blueprint or directionality.
Okay, that's interesting. But what about the arguments against teleology?
Well, the biggest argument against it is that it's unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
We can explain the diversity and complexity of life without resorting to the idea of a grand plan.
Okay, how so?
Just through those mechanisms we've been talking about, random mutations, natural selection, the laws of physics and chemistry, all that.
So even without a specific goal in mind, evolution can still produce incredible results.
Absolutely. Think of it like rolling a dice. If you roll it enough times, you're bound to get some interesting patterns,
Right.
but that doesn't mean someone's rigging the dice, right? It's just
right.
probability at work. And in the same way, evolution can produce complex structures, intricate behaviors, just through the accumulation of random changes over vast stretches of time.
Okay, so we've got these two opposing views. Teleology, which says there's some kind of direction or purpose to evolution, and then this more mechanistic view, which says it's all about random chance and natural selection. Where do you land on this debate?
It's a question that's been debated for centuries, and I don't think there's an easy answer. It's possible that both perspectives have some truth to them.
Really?
Maybe evolution doesn't have a fixed endpoint, a predetermined destination, but maybe there are certain tendencies, biases built into the system.
That nudge it in certain directions.
Exactly. And the exciting thing is science is always evolving, always uncovering new insights. So who knows, maybe as we learn more, we'll gain a clearer understanding of this whole teleology debate.
I like that. Always more to discover. It's been quite the journey, exploring all these different facets of evolution, from Darwin's groundbreaking ideas to the complexities of genetics, the interplay of cooperation and competition, and then these really mind-bending concepts like consciousness and teleology.
It has been quite a ride. And I hope it sparks some curiosity in our listeners, a desire to keep exploring the incredible story of life on Earth.
Absolutely. To everyone listening, keep questioning, keep learning, keep that sense of wonder alive. The world of evolution is full of surprises, and who knows what amazing discoveries are still waiting to be made.
Well said. Until next time, remember, the quest to understand evolution is just as fascinating as the process itself.
That's right. See you all on the flip side.